So good morning, everybody, and welcome to a beautiful Friday morning. Thank you for joining me today. So my name's Laurent Bouvier, and I'm going to be your host today on our first Zone webinar. So some of you might be new to the Zoom platform, so I think most of you are on mute. So don't be worried if you can't hear yourself speaking into the computer. Secondly, you should have at the bottom of the screen an option to do some Q&As. So if you have a question, feel free to ask myself and our guest speaker today, Liam Forde, any questions you want, and we'll do our best to answer those. So before I introduce today's speaker, I just wanted to acknowledge the obvious. So we are living through an extraordinary chapter of the world. And, I think it's impacting everybody's life. There's just so much change going on. So I hope, firstly, that everybody on today's call is safe, their family is safe, and everybody's well, and is really adapting to the change that we're all seeing all around us. The purpose of these webinars is really simple, really. It's just to positively contribute to the well-being of the community. So it's something that I and each one of the guest speakers are doing freely. We're putting it out there for people to come along, take a slice of what they want, and hopefully a few nuggets that will help them as we go through the coming days and weeks ahead of us. But I genuinely believe that in all of this uncertainty, if each one of us does what we can to support and care for each other, then we'll look back at this chapter of history and think, well, actually, we brought our best selves to uncertainty. We led as best we could. We cared as best as we could. And we actually brought out the best sides of humanity. We actually did some amazing things. So we can look back with pride. So let's get started. So I'd like to introduce you to today's guest speaker, Liam Forde. Liam, are you there?
I'm here, Laurent. Thanks for inviting me along.
So cool. So where are you speaking from today, Liam?
Well, I'm in Norwich. I'm with my partner's family. So I located myself in Norwich out of London. I was in London, and I decided to move out of London and onto the edges of Norwich on a beautiful little island on the River Yare. Actually, lovely spot. It's a beautiful day today.
Wow, so you are isolating.
Yeah, I am. So my family's in New Zealand and Australia, so I'm using technology to keep in touch with them. So that's really nice. In fact, I was on with my daughter this morning, having a chat while she was making herself nachos, and I noticed that she'd dyed her eyebrows green. So I was like, yeah, Dad, I'm bored.
Oh, wow. Well, as I can't see you, I hope you've not followed suit and dyed yours green as well.
I haven't, not yet anyway.
No, cool. So look, really appreciate your time, Liam, and I know you've given it up because you're a busy guy. Whilst we can all sort of see your experience, and you've got a great depth of experience, just a few minutes in terms of, what you've gathered over your years.
Well, look, I've been my career's been a little bit a game of two halves, really. I spent, after university, I spent 20 years as an entrepreneur. Started 4 companies before the Zone successfully. One of them here in the UK, in fact, had that one for just over 20 years as a business, and had a staff of around 600 people. So I really learned the world of business back then. And then 20 years ago, I started the Zone, and have now worked in around 35 countries with thousands of leaders and hundreds of different types of businesses. So I've really, decided that, human leadership is, ultimately the way to go. So that's the purpose of the webinars, is to talk about, human leadership.
Brilliant. Okay. So, so I suppose when you think about, what you're doing with your clients, sort of what's happening out there? What are you picking up on there?
Well, I mean, it really is, a really mixed bag. I mean, many of my clients are actually facing huge declines in revenues and having to lay people off, and it's really breaking their heart because many of them, love their employees, and they've been with them for a long period of time, and they're really struggling to keep them on. Others are fighting through layers of bureaucracy to try and find some sort of grants or loans to keep the business going. And still others are struggling with the virtual world. How do we set everyone up effectively in the virtual world when we weren't designed for that?
Yeah.
For anything from creating a space at home to working out how to work with the kids, or if your partner's also working, how do you mix the time so that one of you has the kids while the other one's working, and vice versa, and they're getting through that. So there's a lot of stresses and strains, and personally as well for a lot of leaders. I mean, leadership is about helping people be better and helping people become successful. So when this is sort of thrown up in the air, it's a troubling time for leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose this is uncharted territory for everybody, really. So there's no real past experiences that you can leverage. So I think just getting right to the roots of who we are as people and just showing that care and support, whether that's in the workplace or at home, is probably really, really important.
Yeah, and I think creating new routines is another thing that's really important. So how do you create some new routines? Because going to work used to be a routine, so now you need to create something new, sort of like a discipline. And then of course, from a leader's point of view, working on webinars and working over products like Zoom, how do you read your audience remotely? When they're in the same room, you're picking up lots of cues. How do you read them remotely? So that's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
But I mean, like in every challenge, every dark cloud, there's a silver lining. And strangely enough, I know this might be going off track a little bit. I think it's also relevant. Is when I came here, my partner's mum had a few jobs that she needed doing, and I actually got my old DIY skills out.
All right. I hope they're better than mine.
Yeah, and actually, so last weekend I helped to decorate a room and put a new ceiling in, and varnish it. It was actually really good fun. So I actually realised one thing that gets me in the zone is making things a little bit better and doing a bit of DIY. So that was an amazing silver lining, which I hadn't. And we were having so much fun together as well, chatting and listening to the radio and singing songs. So it was really quite fun. So if you want to do a DIY project, now's the time.
Yeah, well, expect a phone call from me this afternoon then, Liam. If I start to redo the plumbing in the house, I'll definitely be needing your help then when I get it all wrong.
Okay, well, I'll jump in my van and come over.
Cool. So look, mindful, we got people on the webinar, and really I wanted to tap into your knowledge and your experience. So when you think about this situation, when you think about the conversations where you're having with your clients, what's a model or a tool that you would like to share with everybody who's on the call with us that you think will really add value to what we're all going through?
Yeah, well, I chose this morning the whole person model, and thanks for throwing the slide up. So the reason I chose this is because if we're here to talk about human leadership, then we need to understand what makes us human. And in a lot of times, when you're at work, we just seem to be heads on stick, processing data and thinking and doing emails and handling KPIs. And, by the end of the day, after your head's full of facts and figures and graphs and worries and, project plans, you're feeling pretty tired. So we try to enlighten people around the whole person. And the whole person is much more than just a head on a stick. It has so many other elements. And as you can see there, it starts with imagination, head, heart, gut, your action, which is expressed with your hands and your feet, and then being grounded. And this is what unlocks collective intelligence, when you get all of these elements working in harmony. So the whole person is a representation of the modes that we operate with, that we communicate with, how we interact together, and also how we make decisions. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't understand the whole person, you don't really understand human leadership. So I'll give you an example right now. So let's just start with on the diagram here, the foot there, which is the action, representing action. So the hands and feet represent action. So humans are very much active beings. So we're made to move. And in these times right now, when we're in lockdown or we're in isolation, and we can tend to forget that, and we can get stuck at our desks, on webinars, sitting down all the time, and we can get quite sedentary. That's not good for the body, and it's not good for the mind. So what what I would encourage listeners to do with their people is to make sure that the people are also being looked after in terms of a physical element, that they get opportunities to move around during meetings, that meetings are shorter, so you have plenty of break times, you do energizers. They're encouraged to play, they're encouraged to celebrate, and also express themselves sort of physically. A little bit like, you're at a football game and someone scores a goal. We don't just sit there, everyone jumps up and down and cheers. That's innate within humans. So we like to celebrate, we like to have fun. So without that, people tend to get dull. And it reminds me of the English expression, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And I think that's very much it. And I think, for myself, I try and have a routine in the mornings when I wake up. So I don't go onto my device or onto my emails first thing. I get up and I do a 30-minute to an hour routine in the morning. And that's what starts my day. And I try and be really, really disciplined about that. And if you can manage that, you actually wake your body up, you wake your mind up, and you're in the best position for acting.
I'm hearing that you're talking about structure and routine is really important, especially as everything around us is changing and there's so much uncertainty. That sounds like a really important thing, that people create their new routine so they've got something that's moving them through the day.
Absolutely. And it's been well documented that, exercise is a very good antidepressant. So even if you get out and take a walk, if you can, or even in your house, if you do some exercise, and you can do it with your partner as well. I've got a fun exercise you can do together where you're sort of using each other's body weights, or you can play with the kids and do, lift them above your head or swing them around. It's pretty active. So yeah, that's the action part. And I think the next part, which is really important in human leadership, for leaders to understand and each other to understand, is the gut, or the intuition or knowing. So when we can't be face to face and in close proximity with each other, we need to start going deeper in ourselves and following our intuition a bit more. Usually you find in meetings, it's all about facts and figures and proof and data, but there's very good science behind your gut brain. And there's lots of active neurons in your gut that act like a information processing unit, like a mini brain, and then they communicate backwards and forwards to the head. It's the same in the heart as well. I'll move there next. But so, let your gut speak. And maybe on meetings, just say, hey, I don't know, I'm just getting a gut feeling this is not right now. Or there's something else we could do, or maybe the solution could be better, because it drives creativity as well. Now, even if you're not right, and even if the data sort of goes, hey, no, well, it's definitely wrong, you've actually started to think out of the box, and you started to go, well, what if this were to happen. So, you know, the intuition or gut of the human is built in for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's very different to instinct, I might add. Some of the listeners might be sort of saying, oh, isn't this instinct? No, because instinct is more about, you know, the present moment, really in the now. Like, how do I avoid pain? How do I gain pleasure? How do I, you know, avoid difficult situations or threatening situations? So that's more instinct, and that's when the hairs on the back of your neck stand up or on your arm. Intuition's a quieter voice, and it is generally hooked into the long-term well-being of society. And because we're all part of society, we tend to all have that link, but it's very quiet. So you have to quieten yourself down and reflect and relax in order to kick in your intuition. So that would be my next encouragement for leaders, just to sort of, you know, chat with people and talk about what's their gut telling them. Right now too, let's move to the heart area. There's a lot of emotion going on, a lot of feelings, a lot of heartfelt emotion. There's a lot of stress and strain, and you know, my heart reaches out every day to the people that are suffering through this situation. And everyone will be impacted in some way, shape, or form, whether it's isolation from loved ones, or worrying about their parents, or worrying about one of the family members or a friend or their colleagues at work, or just worrying about humanity. And, you know, that's really in the heart. The heart's the center of care and connection. And so if you don't allow people to express their hearts, they're going to like suppress it. And, you know, when you suppress your heart, it can come out in some very strange ways. So it can be a sort of an overreaction or an underreaction because you're suppressing things. And particularly in times of sort of chaos and confusion and discouragement, which is going to be a lot of discouragement now, you can push the body into fight, flight, and freeze. And these are reactions that can increase adrenaline, so you'll start to worry more, you might start to sweat, you might start losing your appetite, you might get more headaches. And, you know, if this carries on for any length of time, you can trigger sort of cortisol, which is not good for your immune system. So allowing people to, you know, express their hearts, and you don't have to solve the problem, just allowing them to express is very good. So make sure that you're checking in with your people as a leader and speaking from the heart, but also asking about the heart. The head, I think, is pretty obvious, and this is though what we use to work our strategies in life. This is where we think things through and choose the best strategy, because in any way, in any goal, there's many ways of achieving a goal, and everyone will have a different version of what's the best goal. And that's where you use your head to work out the pros and cons of each method or each way or each direction, and choose the best one. And that's what the head's made for. It's very much a rational thinking machine with very good predictive powers, so it fills in the blanks. But it's also, you know, the seat of ego and belief systems. And this brings me to, you know, one of the most important things you can do when there's a lot of uncertainty, when there's a lot of confusion, maybe some chaos, and maybe discouragement, is, you know, very high levels of communication. So it's communicate. So you communicate verbally, you communicate in emails, you can communicate with, you know, WhatsApp or a text, long, short, but increase the level of communication and encourage that between people as well as out from the center, out from the leaders. And because if you don't do that, what humans do naturally is fill in the blanks. And they fill in the blanks based on their assumptions and based on their belief system. So they may fill in the blank, which is a worst case scenario, when really where you're wanting to put people's attention is on optimism, hope, encouragement, and best case scenarios. So where possible, it's almost like you feel like you're over communicating, but you don't want to lose anyone through this process. So that's where you can really talk to the head and provide them surety or data that things are going to be okay, or this is what's going to happen. It's very clear. And I think when people have clarity, they then don't go into this fight, flight, freeze response. Mm-hmm. If we move up a level into your imagination, so this is a specialized part of the brain, and you know, it's where the seat of innovation, creativity, and all this what ifs come from. It's where people create music from. It's where people create art from. It's where people create poetry from. It's where our greatest buildings are created from. You know, it's this design thinking. Now, a lot of times at work, particularly when we go in and talk to organizations, we look at their calendars. And their calendars is sort of back to back from 7 a.m. in the morning till 7 p.m. at night. And then they go and do their work once they get home and put the kids to bed. Now, this is not the way to run a human being effectively, because during the day, you don't have any time to use your creativity, your imagination. You don't have time to innovate. And one of the signs of that is people start innovation departments. So because we don't allow people any time to think, we create an innovation department to do all our thinking for us. Right. What that does is it shuts down the creativity and innovation that's available in all of us. And we're usually the ones at the front end doing the work. And that's where most of the creativity can come from. So, you know, amongst a lot of the ideas. So make sure you don't overcrowd your agendas with tasks and things to do, and set aside deliberate creative what if, blue sky thinking, imagination time, and actually do that as a team together, or you know, in pairs or small groups, and really think, hey, let's take some imagination time together. Let's just think, what if? How might we approach this? What if we did this differently? How could we save costs? How could we make things smoother? How could we impact our clients in a more positive way? And that brings me really down to the bottom, which is grounded, real world, practical, every day. And this groundedness, what it means to be grounded with your imagination is that you ground it in something that will benefit others, or benefit customers, or benefit your family. So we can have thousands of ideas and they just remain sort of fantasy or ideas until we ground them. But if you make them practical, and you make them practical in the service to others, you will find you get more energy. And this is where this whole collective intelligence and energy comes from, because you're using your whole person to help others, to make a difference to others. And this is where it gets, you know, where you'll find your energy comes from. And if you do that together with a team, you create this opportunity to create collective intelligence. And this is really one of the most powerful tools that you can have today as a leader, is to be able to unlock collective intelligence of your group, of your team, of your organization, so that you can solve collectively the biggest problems in the world and the biggest problems for your business, and help people solve their own personal problems. So, you know, this is collective intelligence. So yeah, that's the whole person model.
I mean, every time I see this model, Liam, it's just so powerful. And I think I feel it's like universal. It applies to the workplace as much as it does to the family. And knowing that, you know, I, like probably a lot of people, are sort of spending considerably more time at home. I think when I hear you talk about action, you know, that need to have movement, you know, the body is its own dynamo. You know, we get energy through being, you know, having that movement. So you're talking about doing stuff around the house and creating that energy rather than just sitting and working. I think I really hear that. And I think that talking from the heart of, you know, really having good conversations with people, and sharing if you're feeling stressed or anxious, so people can help or just say that. I felt that's a really big message that I heard as well. And you talk about imagination, both within the workplace, but maybe just sitting down with the family, especially people who've got younger children, be able to say, what are we going to do with our time? We can't necessarily go out as much as we have been doing in the past, but what can we do around the house? How can we turn our house into a playground or adventure park or whatever that could look like? So, yeah, what a great tool.
Yeah, thanks, Laurent. Well, I always remember when I was a kid, I got more fun out of playing with the boxes than the toys that came in them, because usually the batteries didn't last that long and we were back to playing with the boxes.
Absolutely, yeah. Back in the days, well, they're big TVs nowadays, aren't they? So those massive boxes, you can turn into a 4.
Yeah, and we used to have little huts and things we'd make under the furniture with blankets, and there's all sorts of fun things you can do with kids. So
yeah. No,
or cooking, cooking things or learning a language together, tons of things.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not being limited. I think there's so many things. To your point about imagination, there's so much more that we can do with this extra time that we've all got. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. I'll tell you what. Let's I'm gonna move us into what I've classed as a bit of a lightning round, just to keep it light, because this is going to be as much fun as anything else. So I've got a series of questions in front of me, Liam. So I hope you're sitting comfortably. So what do you do to relax?
So my relaxation is usually yoga or going for a run. So I like to get out and just clear my mind. And I find that running is sort of like a meditation, and yoga's hard, but it's also like a meditation. If I wasn't confined, I'd be playing badminton or heading for the surf.
For the surf? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know there's no surf in Norwich, but
I was going to say, I've never heard of any surf tournaments in Norwich, but you never know, you might find one up there.
Yeah, water's a bit cold too.
Okay. Look, knowing that your reputation is in leadership, what's your favorite leadership book? What have you been reading recently?
Well, I think I've got a couple which I recommend to people often. One is the book by Howard Schultz about Starbucks turnaround, called Onward. Now, it's an older book, but you really get under the covers of what was really happening for Starbucks when the investment community, when the market started to dictate what Starbucks did, rather than the people and rather than the founder, Howard Schultz. Mm-hmm. So it was really a great book. It's a great read to give you some insights on leadership, but also what's important. And I think right now, what's important is high on everyone's agenda. And the second book is a book by a guy I admire called Patrick Lencioni, and it's called The Advantage. And it's a must read for anyone in leadership. And it talks about, hey, what advantage does it make to organizations, financially, creatively, performance-wise, when you get the culture right, when you really bring people, whole people together, and you get this collective intelligence? What a difference it makes. It's eye-opening, it's full of great data, and it's a great read.
Wow. Okay. Well, I definitely made a note of that one, The Advantage. Cool. Thank you. So, thinking about the number of people that you've connected, and I know you've got some really high-profile clients, but if you had one bit of advice that you've been given that's influenced you, what would that have been, or what is that?
Yeah, well, this is a funny one. Many years ago, early on as a leader, I met a guy who used to work for Tate & Lyle, and he was an older guy, and he was looking for someone to mentor. And so we'd go out and have a coffee or a beer every now and again. Really nice guy. And I remember him saying to me really early on, and I'm sure people have heard this many, many times, but he said, "Hey, Liam, revenue is vanity. In other words, your sales numbers is vanity. Mm-hmm. Profit is sanity, but cash is king." Mm. And I always remembered that. And why I say that now is because it's helped me right now, because having remembered that, I always have kept, I've never spent all of my cash. I've always kept a cash reserve. Yeah. And that always plays in my mind. So I've got to thank him for that. and that's really come home right now. So
yeah. No, I can imagine it does. Okay, so just rounding it all off, really, as we come to the end of the webinar. But any big takeaways? Anything you really want to share with everybody so they can, sort of have something that can move into action outside of this webinar?
Yeah, well, I think I'll come back to the Zone 3 golden rules.
Okay.
And so we operate with 3 golden rules, and they're really simple. And the first golden rule is get yourself in the zone. So you know what gets you in the zone and what gets you out of the zone. So really make the time before you start anything, whether it's a meeting or an interaction with your family or your loved ones or your partner, to get yourself in the zone. So take a few minutes, just quiet time to get yourself in the zone, whatever that is, right? The second golden rule is help someone else get into the zone. You will have a great life if you spend a lot of time helping others get into the zone. I think right now, this is really apt. How can I reach out to someone else? I know I've got a jammed diary, everything's full, but I can tell you now, if you take the time just to reach out, connect in a couple of minutes, you will feel great and they will feel great. And you'll have got yourself into the zone and they'll be in the zone. So it's a great sharing. And the third one is spend more time in the zone together. And that goes for family, friends, kids, brothers, sisters. So make sure that you spend time in the zone together, even if it's remote, and you'll have a great experience. And that's it.
Brilliant. I love that. 3 golden rules. Thank you, Liam. So just putting it all together, just really want to say, firstly, thank you, Liam. Thank you for sharing your time, your wisdom and your insights. That's been really helpful. Thank you very much for that. I want to thank everybody who's been able to join us today. Thank you for making the time and contributing. We will be having another webinar next week. So there will be one next Thursday. Details of that will be going up on LinkedIn and via email. So do join us for that if you can. And if you have any comments, thoughts, questions, then obviously our details are up on the screen now. Please post them up, keep in touch. And yeah, hope you all have a great weekend. I hope you found today useful. Stay safe. Speak to you all soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And Laurent?
Yeah.
Just I noticed we have a question from Andrew Truby. So,
okay.
And Andrew, I'll cycle back around and answer this question live right now. So if you hang on for another minute, I'll do that now.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks, Liam.
Everyone else, ciao. Thanks for listening and have a great day.
Perfect.